My husband had an affair when I was 26 years old, and I did not find out about it until I was 55, 1 week after I buried him. And the way I found out was that his entire family had known the whole time, and finally, by accident, let me in. That is the fact of it. Let me give you the rest. My name is Margaret. I am 55 years old, and I spent most of my life as a piano teacher and the organist at our church here in Stillwater, Minnesota. A small river town of old houses and long winters, the kind of place where everybody knows everybody, which I always thought was a warm thing and have lately had to reconsider. I am a precise woman. I keep time for a living, or I did. I can hear when a thing is a half beat off. And I would have told you, a month ago, that I could hear the rhythm of my own marriage perfectly, that 34 years had made me fluent in it. I was wrong about that, the way you can be wrong about a song you have played your whole life and never once read the words to. My husband was named Tom. We married young, both of us 23, and we built the ordinary good life. 2 children, now grown and gone, a brick house, a marriage that was not a fairy tale, but was, I believed, a true and faithful partnership. Tom was a quiet man, steady, a high school history teacher, the kind of husband who was always home, who coached and graded and showed up, who in 34 years gave me almost no reason for alarm. He died this past autumn, suddenly, a heart thing, no warning. One Tuesday he was complaining about the gutters, and the next he was gone, and I was a widow at 55, and the house went silent in a way I did not know a house could. We had been, I thought, one of the lucky ones. Not dramatic, not passionate in the way of movies, but easy with each other in the way of 2 people who had sanded down to a comfortable fit. We had our rituals. His coffee, my scales in the morning, the crossword we split down the middle, his half and mine. He sat in the 3rd pew every Sunday while I played, and he always found my eyes once during the service, every single week for 30 years, a small private thing between the organ loft and the pews. I built a great deal of my sense of myself on the solidity of that man and that marriage. I was Margaret, who had the good, steady husband, the one friends quietly envied in the years when their own marriages were coming apart. I had pitied them, a little, God forgive me, in the smug, safe way you pity people when you believe yourself exempt. I thought faithfulness was simply the water Tom and I swam in, the given condition of us. It did not once occur to me, in 34 years, that I might be the only person at the table who believed that. You know how the week after a death goes? Or maybe you don't, and I hope you don't for a long time yet. It is a blur of administration wearing the mask of grief. There are casseroles and thank you notes and 100 small decisions, and the family swarms in to help, and that is how it happened. Tom's sister, Carol, trying to be kind, trying to keep me in the loop on who was bringing what and which cousins were driving in, added me to the big family group chat. The Sullivan family chat, decades of them on it, Tom's siblings and cousins and their spouses, a sprawling running conversation I had somehow never been part of in all my years married into them. Carol added me so I would not miss the logistics. I am sure she never once thought about what else was sitting in that chat, up above the line where I'd been added, in all those years of history, now suddenly visible to me with a scroll of my thumb. I should explain, for anyone whose family does not run on these things, what that chat was. It was the nervous system of the whole Sullivan clan, going back years and years. Birthday reminders, prayer requests, photos of new grandbabies, the endless logistics of a big, close family. I had always known it existed. Tom was on it. His phone would buzz with it all through dinner. But I had never been a member, and I had never thought twice about that, the way you do not think about the door to a room you have no reason to enter. It was the family's room, not the in-laws. So, when Carol added me that week, it was a small intimacy, really, a gesture that meant, you are one of us now, we will carry you through this. She meant it kindly. I am certain she added me and then never gave a single thought to the 30 years of conversations sitting above the line, the way you forget what is written in a diary you stopped reading long ago. She opened a door to comfort me, and on the other side of it was the one thing in the world she had spent 3 decades making sure I would never see. I was not snooping. I want to say that, the way the betrayed always have to. I was looking for a message about the reception, and my thumb, idle, grieving, scrolled up. And a name caught my eye, the way a wrong note catches your ear. The name was Diane. I did not know a Diane. But the family clearly did, because there she was, woven through years of their chatter, mentioned the way you mention a person everyone has a settled opinion about. And the messages around her name, once I started reading, and God help me, once I started I could not stop. I sat on my own couch in my black dress and read for 2 hours. The messages told a story that the whole family knew by heart and had simply never, in 3 decades, told to me. When I was 26 and our first child was a baby, Tom had an affair. Her name was Diane. It went on for the better part of a year. She was someone from the school where he taught, and it had not been a secret, not within his family. His mother had known, his sisters had known, the cousins had known. It had been, I slowly understood from 30 years of references, a known chapter of the family history, a thing they discussed and worried over, and eventually, apparently, forgave him for and folded into the past. The year Tom nearly wrecked everything, the year Tom came to his senses. Do you remember when Tom and that Diane business? All of it laid out, casual, decades old, in the family record. Everyone had known. Everyone had carried it. Everyone had agreed, it was plain, never to let it reach me. And it never had. For 29 years, the entire family I had married into had known the single most important secret about my own marriage, and had kept it from me so completely that I learned it only by an accident of grief, from a group chat, 1 week after the man himself was safely in the ground and could never be asked a thing about it. What undid me, as I read, was not the drama of it, but the casualness. I had always imagined that if a thing like this existed, it would feel enormous, lit up, unmistakable. But in the chat, it was small. It was an aside in a conversation about something else entirely. A cousin saying, "Remember when Tom went through that bad patch with the Diane situation? Ha! Thank God your mother kept her head." And then the conversation moved on to a recipe. That was the texture of it. My whole marriage had a trapdoor in it, and to the people standing around it, it was so old and so familiar that they could step over it without looking down, mid-sentence, on their way to talking about a casserole. The thing that had never once existed in my version of our life was, in theirs, so settled that it had become a punchline. I think that was the loneliest moment of the whole night, understanding that I had been living in a different marriage than everyone around me, alone, for 29 years, and had never once felt the draft. I sat there in the dark for a long time. I want to try to describe what that particular grief is like, because it is not like the others, and I had no name for it. It is not the hot, clean shock of catching a cheater in the act. There was no act to catch. The man was dead, and the affair was older than some of my friends' marriages. It was something stranger and colder. It was the feeling of every memory I owned quietly developing a second meaning. Because now I had to go back through 30 years with this new fact in my hand and reread all of it. The year our daughter was a baby and Tom was distant and working late so often, I had blamed the baby, the exhaustion, the money, the strange tension at certain family gatherings that I had always attributed to Tom's difficult mother. The way his sister Carol had always been just slightly too kind to me, too solicitous, a warmth I had treasured and now understood was something closer to guilt. 30 years of my own life rearranged themselves in 2 hours on that couch, every smooth surface suddenly showing the seam it had been hiding. And the man who could have explained any of it, softened any of it, asked my forgiveness for any of it, was gone. 8 days gone, forever beyond the reach of a single question. There is one memory I cannot stop turning over. When our daughter was about 1, Tom disappeared for a weekend. A history teacher's conference, he said, 3 towns over. I remembered it because I had been so exhausted and resentful, alone with a colicky baby, and because when he came home, he had been strange and tender and apologetic in a way I had chalked up, for 30 years, to guilt over leaving me with the baby. He had brought me flowers. He had cried a little that weekend, and I had thought he was just tired, just moved by fatherhood. I have rebuilt that whole weekend in my mind 100 times this winter, with the new fact placed inside it, and I will never know which version is the true one. And that is the specific torture of a late truth. It does not just tell you that one thing happened. It reaches back and turns every tender moment into a suspect, every kindness into a possible apology for something, until you cannot trust even your good memories, because you no longer know what they were really about. That is the cruelty of the timing, and I have had to make my peace with it, because rage at a dead man is a fire with nothing to burn. I will never get to ask Tom why. I will never get to hear whatever he might have said, that he was sorry, that it was the great shame of his life, that he had spent 30 years trying to make it up to me in ways I never recognized because I never knew there was a debt. Maybe he would have said all that? Maybe he would have said nothing worth hearing. I will simply never know. And I have had to learn to hold a betrayal that has no other side to it, no possible conversation, just the bare fact of it sitting in my hands forever. The affair, strange to say, is not actually the thing I have struggled with most. 30 years is a long time. I find I can almost hold the affair itself the way the family did, as an old wound on a marriage that, whatever its hidden seam, did genuinely last, and did, I still believe, contain real love. A young man, a new baby, a hard year, a terrible mistake, a return. People survive that. Marriages survive that. If Tom had told me himself, at 26 or at 50, I think we might have survived it too. No. The thing I have wrestled with, the thing that kept me up through the winter, is the silence. It is that everyone knew. It is that for 29 years I walked into Sullivan family Christmases and Sullivan family funerals and Sullivan family weddings, and I hugged those people, and I trusted those people, and I believed I was among my family. And every one of them was holding this thing about my own life, and every one of them looked at me and decided, again and again, year after year, that I was not to be told, that I could not handle it, that the marriage, or the family peace, or simply their own comfort, was better served by my not knowing. I was the only adult in that entire family who did not know the truth about my own marriage. They had all been led into my life more deeply than I had been led into it myself. And I have gone back and forth all winter on what that silence was, because there are two ways to read it, and they are both true, and they do not cancel each other out, and learning to hold both is the actual work this has asked of me. On the hard days, the silence is the deepest insult of my life. It is condescension dressed as kindness. They decided, without ever asking me, that I was too fragile for my own truth. They made me a child in my own marriage, a person to be managed and protected and steered around, the one who gets the edited version. There is a particular humiliation in learning that everyone in the room knew you were being a fool and loved you and let you go on being one. They did not protect me. They protected themselves from the discomfort of telling me, and they protected the image of Tom, and they called it protecting me, and I was the only one who paid for it, in a dignity I did not even know I was losing for 29 years. But on the other days, and they are not fewer, just quieter, I can see the other reading, and it is also true. They were young, most of them, when it happened, and frightened, and then a year passed, and then 5, and the moment to tell me curdled into the impossibility of telling me, because how do you tell a woman a thing like that after she has built a whole happy life on top of not knowing it? Every year that went by made the telling more catastrophic and the silence more merciful, until the silence was no longer a choice anyone was making, but simply the shape the family had hardened into. And underneath it, I do believe, was a kind of love, clumsy, cowardly, real. They did not want to wound me. They watched me be happy, and they could not bring themselves to be the one to end it. That is not nothing. It is a poor, bent, frightened kind of love, but I have decided it is love, because the alternative is to believe that 30 people who held me at 30 Christmases felt nothing for me at all, and I do not believe that, and I will not spend my widowhood believing it. So here is where I have come to, after a long winter alone in a quiet house, and it is not triumphant and it is not bitter, and I offer it to you for whatever it is worth. I have decided not to let the last thing I learn about a 34-year marriage be the worst thing. The affair is real, and the silence is real, and they have both changed the shape of what I thought I had. But they are not the whole of it. There were 34 years, and most of them were good, and the love in them was not erased by a bad year I only just found out about, any more than it was created by my ignorance of that year. I loved a flawed man who did a terrible thing young and, I have to believe, spent a long, quiet life trying to be worth staying with. I was loved imperfectly by a whole imperfect family who could not find the courage to be honest with me and could not quite stop loving me either. That is a truer and a sadder and a fuller marriage than the spotless one I thought I had. And it is mine. And I am not going to throw away 34 real years because the last week handed me a 30-year-old wound. I play the organ again now, on Sundays. I did not for a while. I could not sit in that loft and look down at the third pew where he was not anymore, and now where the whole truth of him was not either. But I have gone back, because the music was mine before it was ever part of us, and because I have decided that he does not get to take it from me, and they do not get to take it either, the silent ones who knew. When I play now, I am able to think a thing I never expected to be able to think without bitterness. That a person can be both the man who found my eyes from that pew for 30 years and the man who once, terribly, looked away. And that I am allowed to keep the first man without pretending the second never existed. Grief is supposed to be simple in the stories. Mine is not simple. I am grieving a man and an illusion and a family's honesty all at once, and somehow, slowly, the music holds all three of them without breaking, which is more than I can yet do myself, and so I let it carry the part of the weight I cannot. I did write back to the group chat, by the way, after the 2 hours after the dark. I typed, very simply, "I've scrolled up. I know about Diane now. I'm not angry, but I wish one of you had trusted me with it while I still had 30 years to do something with it." And then I left the chat. I did not need to read any more of what they had carried. I had read enough. If you have ever found out that you were the last to know, that a room full of people you loved had quietly agreed for years that you could not be trusted with the truth about your own life, then this story is for you. One word in the comments if it found you. Last. Just that. It is for everyone who has discovered, too late, that they were the one being managed, the one being protected, the one being steered carefully around the truth, and who is trying, now, to decide what that silence actually was. Subscribe for new stories, real patterns, full narratives, the long game. 2 small pieces of wisdom from this one before I go. The first, if you are ever holding a hard truth about someone's life that they do not know, and you are telling yourself you are protecting them by staying silent, please understand what I have learned at 55. The protection has an expiration date, and after it, the silence stops being a kindness and becomes a theft. It steals from them the chance to decide their own life with their eyes open. My family's silence might have been mercy in the first year. By the 10th, by the 20th, it was simply a cage they had built around me and called a shelter, and the longer it stood, the more impossible it became to tear down, until only death could open it, and by then it was far too late for it to do me any good. Do not let your protective silence outlive its mercy. The window in which a hard truth is a gift is much shorter than you think. The second, if a hard truth ever does reach you too late to confront anyone, too late to change anything, just a cold fact dropped into your lap by accident, you will be tempted to let it become the lens through which you see everything that came before. Resist that. A late truth is real, but it is not the whole story, and it does not get to retroactively erase the years you actually lived. I will not let a bad year I learned about in my 50s cancel 3 good decades I lived through in real time. The betrayal is part of my marriage now. It is not all of it, and I get to decide the proportion. So do you. Do not let the last thing you learn become the only thing you remember. Being the last to know does not mean you were the fool. It means you were the one they were most afraid to wound. And that, in its way, is its own bitter kind of love. I'll see you next time.